Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening for our Family History Month program, Putting a Face to a Name, Finding Old Family Photos. I'm Pam Taylor, manager at Harford County Public Library's Joppa branch. This performance is being recorded and will be available, along with a handout, at hcplonline.org on the HCPL Universe page for the next 4 weeks. Now let's get on with that show. We're thrilled to have Lisson back with us this evening. She's a great presenter, she's lovely to work with, and is such a true excitement for genealogy. Lisa is the leading genealogy expert and founder of Are You My Cousin? A comprehensive online resource dedicated to empowering family history enthusiasts worldwide. Through her website, engaging YouTube channel, and sought-after speaking engagements, Lisa equips researchers with practical strategies and clear tutorials to navigate the exciting world of genealogy and to cultivate their family trees with confidence. Recognized for her expertise, Lisa has authored numerous genealogy articles, created hundreds of helpful YouTube videos, and presented internationally. Her latest book, 100 Questions for Grandma, published by Callisto Media, offers a valuable guide to unlocking cherished family stories. Lisa will be using a PowerPoint during her presentation this evening, and you can adjust what you're seeing on your screen by using Screen View in Zoom. Please feel free to submit questions via the Q&A feature in Zoom, and at the end of the show, I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. Excuse me. We would really appreciate it if you could take time to complete the quick survey after the credits. We use your input to choose topics for our virtual genealogy program, so it's time well spent and it takes just a moment. Now it's my pleasure once again to introduce Lisa Lisson.
Thanks, Pam. Hey guys, I'm so excited to be back with the Harford County Public Library. You guys are a fun group to talk with, and I get to talk about some of my favorite topics. And tonight that is finding old family photographs. So I'm going to share my screen. Give me just a minute here. We'll pull everything up so you guys can see my slides. And let me see make it so I can see what I need to see, and we are good to go. There we go. All right, guys. Again, like I said, this is actually one of my favorite topics, and that is old family photographs in general. And I think by the end of this, you're going to see why I'm so passionate about finding old family photos. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight, guys, is finding old family photographs, because we know a lot about our ancestors, but maybe we don't really know what they actually looked like, right? So in our time together tonight, we are going to be exploring a lot of what I call out-of-the-box resources for old family photographs. So I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of different types of records and record collections that you could potentially find family photos in. And more importantly, too, I'm going to actually show you where to find those resources as well. We are going to walk through a lot of different examples. So I really want to make sure that this is very practical for you, and that when you leave tonight, you've got a handful of things that you can go right away and start looking for. Some of these are going to be online, some are going to be offline, certainly, but I'll make that clear. And in the handout, any of the links that I mentioned, any of the websites that I mentioned, if I mention them, they are in the handout, so you don't have to worry about rushing to write anything down. It will be in the handout as well. So this is the question that I got a lot when I first started out teaching genealogy. It is a question that I asked a lot early in my research, probably not as early as I should have, but it really is the question of, is it even possible to find photographs of our ancestors? You know, I wondered that, because as a genealogy researcher, if you've been doing this for a while, you know a lot about your ancestor. And if you were just starting out, if you were beginning your research and you're just starting out, you've got a lot of fun information that you're going to be learning. And it's, as you get started, you know, we know where they are. We can put them sometimes in time. We can put them in a specific place on the map. We can learn about the makeup of the family in a census record. We can read the obituary and learn a little bit more about an ancestor and their life, even from just a few short sentences. So we can learn about perhaps how old they were, and you know, what was their cause of death and when they died, and you know, where they lived, where they grew, and who survives them. We can learn those pieces of information. You know, if we're fortunate enough to have family letters, we can actually learn about their personality. I think that's so fascinating when we can take someone from our family tree and we can actually, through the records, whether it's just what they did in their life or if actually can find something that they wrote, to learn a little bit about their personality and what kind of made them tick. I love that. I think that's such an important thing. But the thing that I think we miss, and one of the questions I really started to ask myself was, what did your ancestors look like? So I wanted to know what my ancestors look like. And I think this is what people are really starting to ask. They're like, okay, I've got all that information, but hey, what did they look like? But I actually want to take it one step further because I think while we want to know what our ancestors look like, I think there's a different question that we are probably asking ourselves. And that is, do I look like my ancestors? So do I, and let me grab my pointer here. That is a little picture of me in the bottom corner there. Do I look like my great grandmother or my great great grandmother? That was really more of the question as I started looking at photographs. I wanted to know what they looked like, but I wanted to know, did I look like them? And I expect you're kind of wondering the same thing too. Now, in this particular case, well, I don't really think so. I do see their features are very common through one side of my dad's side of the family. I do see that, but I'm not so sure I actually took after that side of the line, but that's okay. But in order for me to really be able to answer that question of what did they look like or do I look like them? What features might I have? Well, we have to be able to find those photographs. And that can be a bit of a challenge. And so that's one of the things that that's what I really want to tackle tonight. But I'm going to also be sharing with you a few little pointers in there as well as to what to do when you find that photo. With that, I'm jumping right in, guys. So the very first thing that I want you to do when it comes to finding photographs is to ask your family. Now, I know this is very basic. You were told this when you first started your genealogy research. It holds true for that. It holds true for finding photos. And if we were face to face, you're probably going, yeah, Lisa, move on. You need to move on. We all know this, and I don't have anybody else to ask. But I'm going to challenge you and tell you, take a step back and think, who can you ask for photos in your family? Now, it could be that you have asked before in the past and people are like, I don't really have any. Or I don't know where they are. I don't know who has those old family photographs. You could be, like I am, getting to be the older generation in the family. You don't have your parents to ask, or you don't have your grandparents to ask anymore. If you do, absolutely go and ask. But I bet you have distant relatives such as great aunts and uncles or those second and third cousins that might have photographs that you could ask for and to see what they might have. Um, for instance, I know that when my grandmother was coming along, my great grandmother, excuse me, was coming along. She was born in the late 1890s. And so by the time she was a teenager or a young woman, the Brownie camera was fairly common at the time. And so she and her friends used that and took a lot of photographs and they shared those photographs. She had a ton of cousins. She shared those photographs with her cousins. And guess what? When I started being intentional about finding those photographs, I was discovering them in photo albums 3,000 miles away on an entirely, like coming down a second cousin once removed line. So it was a really powerful moment to recognize that these photos could be not just in our family line, but in other family lines. So absolutely, we've got to be able to ask not just our immediate family, but the rest of our family. All right, so I want to take a moment here and introduce you to this lovely lady. Her name is Della Thomas Harwood. She lived her entire life. She lived her entire life in Eastern North Carolina, and she was my great great grandmother. Now, I knew a lot about Della. I had found her in the records. I knew who she was married to. I knew who her mother was. I was pretty sure I knew who her father was. Had a pretty good circumstantial case there. But at the end of the day, I don't really know because she was born out of wedlock. Well, I had the opportunity to interview one of her grandsons. He was like my first cousin, twice removed and in his mid-90s. I interviewed him about a year before he passed away. And I was pretty new into genealogy research. I was heavily researching this Harwood Howard family line, and I was pretty new at it at this still. But I recognized the importance of interviewing older family members. And again, remember, I'd never met him. I may have heard of him at one point, but I was able to get in touch with him, his daughter, and she met me there, and I was able to interview him again, mid 90s. And so we talked about Della. We talked about a lot of family members, but I asked him specifically about Della. This was his grandmother, and he knew her. He was the only person I ever met who actually knew her. So he would tell me about her and, how sweet she was and that she really loved to cook and she would, what she would do and what she would make the kids and everything. So he said, "Oh, yeah," he said, "and that's her picture right over there hanging on the wall." Guys, I stopped. I was so dumbstruck because here I am talking family history. She is in this picture on the wall. And it never even occurred to me to ask when I got there, do you have family photos that I could look at that you would be willing to share with me? Can we, do you have any? Do you have pictures of your grandparents and great grandparents and so forth? And he just happened to have this one in the house and on the wall. So at that point, I had this really aha moment. And that is that photographs of my ancestors did exist. I could find them, that it was possible, but I would have to be very intentional about finding them. I needed a plan. I knew that, I mean, I was very fortunate because this was a very serendipitous type of find. I found it. I wasn't looking for it, but I found it. And I think a lot of us as researchers do have those types of discoveries, but I couldn't just count on serendipitous finds. I had to be very intentional. And so at that point, every family member was fair game. And turns out I have a lot of distant cousins that I could ask. Now, once you've kind of exhausted that family, or as you're exhausting, talking to all the cousins, reach out to collateral families and friends because your ancestors, photos of your ancestors, letters from your ancestors could be in someone else's closet. Someone who's not related to you. And that's because, our ancestors did not live in a bubble. Okay. They had neighbors, they had friends, they certainly had relatives, obviously. And I discovered this as a way to find more photographs. Again, it was a serendipitous event. I was still fairly new into genealogy, but I've been doing it for a while. But the blog, my Are You My Cousin website, was still pretty much in its infancy at that point. And I happened to post this particular photograph on the website. And I think it was on the website for 6 months or more. Could have been more. I don't really remember. And this woman's nephew reached out to me. So a little background. This is my great grandmother Esther. This is her mother Harriet. But this is Esther's best friend, Nanny Lee Farson. Nanny is not related to me at all, but she is Esther's best friend. So this photo was out there for a while, and a gentleman who was researching the Farson side of the Farson family, reached out to me and said, "That's a photograph of my aunt. I knew her. I grew up knowing her, and I remember her talking about Esther." And so I was able to share this photograph with him. So I had his family history. I had his ancestor in my closet. And I was able to actually share some letters. I did have copies of letters, so I digitized everything and shared it with him. And again, it was another realization to me that, oh, who else could have pictures of Esther and her cousins in their closet? So this was a really important piece of information for me. Now, let me take that circle off for a second. Why do I go so far? Because reaching out to researchers who own collateral family lines, friends of my ancestors, why am I researching them? What is it? And why do I go to that much trouble? Well, one, I want to know what my ancestors looked like. I want to know if I look like them. But I also view a photograph like this as a document, just like you would recognize, say, a deed as a very important document in your research, a will. Well, this photograph is it is a visual record, and there are things that I can pick up from looking at these photographs, such as I'm always looking at face shapes to see, do I see those family resemblances coming down? I'm looking at these two women writing. This actually turned out to be a staged photograph, but I noticed that my great grandmother was left-handed. And I know that because Nanny Lee was right-handed because she has her wedding band on her left finger. So by watching and looking at the hands and making sure I wasn't looking at just some, reversed photograph, I realized that she, Esther, was left-handed. And it turned out I found a photograph with her her mother, who was also left-handed. And sure enough, we have left-handers that kind of run through the family. Does that actually tell me something about, the next generation back? Not really, but it does give me a little bit of insight into a woman who died in 1924, who died as a young mother. And so just any little piece of information I can get is so important to be able to know that. Um, to be able to know that information about them. All right, so I like to call reaching out to other researchers, reaching out to these collateral families, really more as networking, but we're going to do it genealogy style because I think that as we research and as we use networking skills in our professional lives, oftentimes, I think we can also use those in genealogy. We can use those skills and think about who is the best person. If you're finding photographs or if you're finding names that consistently appear alongside your ancestor, reach out to them. They likely have other information. Or if you see a photograph of your ancestor posted online, so that gentleman who saw the picture of his aunt on my website, likely, and it turned out it was in this case, likely that person, when you post that stuff, you actually might have more information. And absolutely I did. I have other photographs and other letters that I was able to share. So be strategic and network. And always remember, guys, no cousin, in quotation marks, is too far geographically or on that family tree not to potentially have a photograph of your ancestors, or at least some information. So again, you never quite know where they might show up, but don't stop looking. Okay, now we want to make sure we are also looking at local and state archives. I think when I go to the archives, oftentimes I am deep into that traditional genealogy record research. But the archives also have photographs, and your ancestor could potentially be among those. Now, I would recommend that you talk maybe to the staff if you're not really sure where to find them or what they might have. I would talk to the staff there at the archives to see if they might be able to help you out. Let them know what you're looking for. They also, you might want to include looking for photographs of the houses. If your ancestor lived in more of an older house or historic house, certain area, I was able to do that and access their records that way. But the photographs were a little tougher for me to find. I actually had to reach out. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I've seen this for a long time, and I saw kind of an increase during COVID because the archives weren't open to the public, but when the staff went back to work, I started to notice that some of the digital databases were becoming more robust. They were adding more to that. And so because the archives will often have photographs of our ancestors, they will frequently, scan them and digitize them and get them onto their digital collection so that you can actually just peruse these things right from your home, right from your desk. And so that's a place I always check because I don't want to spend time at the archives looking for something that I could do at home. I want to, my time is limited when I'm there on site. So, but here's an example. So this is actually just a screenshot from the top part of the digital collections page at the North Carolina State Archives for their digital collections. And so a couple of things to see here. We have what's called the Brimley photograph collection. So this was actually for this is photographic negatives that were taken by Herbert Hutchison Brimley. He was a photographer who worked with the agricultural department of the state and took a lot of photographs down in the eastern part of the state. And certainly included farmers down there. So this would be a collection that might be interesting to peruse. Another really great one is the African American education. So this is not actually specifically a photographic collection, but they have photographs. So it's information and documents about educating African American in was around before 1950, and they have photographs, and they're beautiful photographs. And I'm thrilled when I got in there because it's women. There are women were included, and so certainly um, sometimes, finding women in the family tree, it's difficult. And so I just think this is a lovely collection. So I would encourage you to peruse the digital collections there as you go through, and not just the specific photographic collections, but take time and just read through the page, because you can see right here, alien registration and naturalization. Look, they're already showing that there could be potentially photographs there. So you take time and peruse the digital collection for the archives of the state where your ancestors lived. The other thing, this was a tip that I got from my friend Melissa Barker. You may have heard of her. She is the archive lady. Now, Melissa is a fantastic genealogy researcher, but she's also a trained archivist. And so she gave me this tip one time. She said, talk to the archivist, talk to the person at the desk, and ask them about their uncatalogued collections that could be on the shelf. So what happens when families donate information to an archive? So they have, important papers that might be pertinent to the archives that they want to preserve for that area, that state, that region. So they might donate, the family would donate their materials. Could be family papers, could be actual documents, it could be photographs, could be anything. But if this archives takes it, they have it, but it takes them a while sometimes to get everything processed and out and ready for public viewing, because sometimes these collections are quite large. Melissa's recommendation was ask the archivist, are there uncatalogued collections that could potentially have this type of information that I'm looking for? In other words, can you bump it up in the queue to be able to perhaps process it? Because the archivists, they know what's back there. They know what they have. They just haven't gotten it, completely ready. So I found that to be a really cool little tip. Sometimes they kind of look at me like, you're crazy, Lisa. Other times I have a friend who did that at one archives, and they just handed her a whole box of stuff. She was going through it, showing me things. It was amazing what she was finding in that thing. So it never hurts to ask. That's my thing. Right. Another really great resource, guys, are church histories and directories. Now, churches would periodically publish histories and directories. I see that today. I certainly see it in my ancestors' churches, and it doesn't seem to matter. The church could be very small, could be a very small rural church, it could be a very large city church. But churches will periodically publish their histories and directories. Oftentimes, they're kind of combine them. You might find little leaflets that are just histories, but oftentimes they'll combine them with that. And they will oftentimes, the purpose is one, to share the history and document it, document the members, and also if a church is of a certain size or a large size, they want people to be able to recognize each other. It's a way of helping people learn who they are. Think of it like a church yearbook in a sense. So this was an interesting little thing too, and this is a little history from the Juniper Springs Baptist Church. And I was interviewing an older aunt of mine before she passed away. And again, remember, guys, family history, oral history, we've got to make sure we're interviewing everybody. And I mentioned to her that I had discovered that our ancestors were early members of this church, Juniper Springs Baptist Church. This is outside of Sanford, North Carolina, eastern part of North Carolina. And I said, "Oh, did you know?" And I really was just sharing information. I wasn't going anywhere with my line of questioning. And she kind of had this thoughtful look on her face, and she got up and she walked into the den, and she came back and she handed me this little blue book. And she said, "You mean this book?" She said, "This church?" And I'm like, "Oh, yes, that church." So this church, here we go. This is a little history. Started in 1812. The little history was written in 1982. This church is still going, guys, still going strong down in the eastern part of North Carolina. So once I kind of was like, oh, wow, what have I got here? I start thumbing through the pages, and I came to this page. Guys, I came literally face to face with my third great grandparents. I was speechless, absolutely speechless. This is the Reverend and Mrs. Caswell Harwood. He was obviously a minister from 1863 to 1868. And here I was looking at their faces. Now, what's more is my aunt had no idea who these people were. She had no idea. The family history hadn't really gotten down to her, I guess, as well, but she had no idea that these were actually her great grandparents. And so I was just over the moon, as you can imagine. Genealogy, happy dance, the whole bit kind of happening there. So I was thrilled. Now, when you see something like this, I don't know if you noticed this here, but this was just something I noticed because sometimes you see prints of pictures. Look at this. There are little prints stuck in the corners of each or little photos stuck in each corner. And there's a little bit of frame. Okay. Pay attention to the details because that told me that this was a frame, one of those framed photographs that we see, like an antique frame photograph. And there were more pictures that somebody had stuck them in there. And I'm like, I want those pictures. Now, I did do a lot of searching. I did talk to a lot of cousins I never knew existed. And unfortunately, it appears the photograph actually is no longer in the family. It got out of the family. So unfortunately, I've never seen the original, but I did come face to face with them. So where do you find these little church histories and directories? Guys, they're actually a little easier than you think they might be. So first of all, the church itself or the church historian. Most churches I discovered, small or large, have somebody who is a designated church historian. Talk to that historian because they may not know your answer, but hopefully they know where they are, where the directories are, other information that might be helpful about the church. So when you're doing any kind of church research for your ancestors, the church historian is a really good person to kind of find to talk with. Current and former members certainly might have some of these little histories, like my aunt did. Local historical societies, sometimes they have a collection of these. They'll have a small collection. Sometimes special collections at university libraries. I've seen them less there, but I have seen them. And oftentimes it's maybe if a university might be affiliated with that denomination or that particular church. State or regional denomination offices. So um, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Catholics, they have archives, historical archives that you can access for records as well. They're typically not online, but you can reach out to them and talk to them about that. Absolutely, guys, check your local library. You can absolutely call them. If I'm doing on-site research, so if I'm doing county courthouse research for somebody or for myself, I actually will try to make time to stop by the local library because local libraries have oftentimes have local history sections. Sometimes they have genealogy sections. Sometimes they have family history rooms. And the ladies here, okay, your staff did not actually pay me to say that. I love and sing the praises of the local library for research because, guys, if they don't know the answer, they know where to tell you to look. That's important. All right, then we have yearbooks. So when I say yearbooks, this is another place to find your ancestors, okay? School records. This is one of the school type of records that I talk about. And I bet when I said yearbook, everybody in their head immediately goes, you have that memory of the school picture in the yearbook. And oh my gosh, I hope, please, please, please don't take my school picture after I've had PE. Make sure I can get my picture taken before PE that day or whatever. So, everybody's always worried about, the school picture. So, I don't think our ancestors were all that different when it comes to this kind of thing. So, but what I would tell you is not to get caught thinking that yearbooks are only referred to, say, school. So only like to a high school or a college. Certainly it does refer, but there are other types of yearbooks that are out there. I'll show you in just a second here. Okay, so definitely we have college yearbooks. Okay, I'm just going to show you guys. This is me right here. Okay, 1987. So this is the Oakleys. This is from this is actually, I found it on the Digital NC site. They have a robust yearbook collection, both high school and college or university. I'm seeing more and more sites like this out for different states. So I would absolutely tell you to check for those. We're seeing more and more of these types of collections that are out there around the country. And this was digitized. I was able to literally page through it with my from my desk. So this was my yearbook, my senior yearbook, basically, that's actually sitting out in my closet. So college yearbooks, absolutely, you want to go for that. But we also have Ancestry. So Ancestry, the big genealogy databases also have yearbook collections. And it does tend to vary from website to website, database to database will have a vary. So different ones. This is actually from 1915. This is the Sphinx, which is the Citadel from Charleston, South Carolina, the yearbook. So this is a really, we have a group photo here. Sometimes you'll get other photos as well. Then when I mentioned that they're not always school yearbooks, think in terms of things like the military. Okay, this is actually an example, again, founded at ancestry.com. They have a collection called the Navy Cruise Books. And so this is the Destroyer Division 252 from 1958. But this is a yearbook that we can see and look for our ancestor there. So this would be something, if you have ancestors in the military, you might want to seek out and see, were they a part of any type of book that would have, yearbook type of thing that would have been created. So this was one I had not thought about and was really excited to find. So I've been searching these for an uncle of mine that would have been in the Navy during this time period. So don't forget to look at that. And then I would also encourage you to check the different databases so that you might have subscriptions to. Family Search, of course, is free, but then you have the subscription databases, Ancestry, MyHeritage, and Find My Past. They typically have different collections. There might be some overlap, but they will typically have different ones as well. Okay, and that just kind of follow on as to where we might find these yearbooks. Again, they could be on your family's, on a family member's bookshelf. That's where this little one actually doesn't have any photographs, but this was a yearbook there. Again, the big genealogy databases, you want to look at them. State archives. Yes, definitely check the state archives. As I mentioned, a lot of them are including yearbooks as part of their digital collections, but they may also have the actual ones. The state library would be another place to check if they might have this. So the state archives, but also the state library. The local library may have the local ones, so certainly you could look there. Historical societies may not, depends on what their donations were. And the school itself. Now, I put that on here for completeness, but to be honest, guys, I've never actually gone to a school to ask for their yearbook. But to be honest, if I'm desperate enough, I probably would. And then, of course, the relatives bookshelves. So you want to check those. And I do find these sometimes show up. It might be in a random box as people clean out their houses. Now, here's another place that is a really, I like to do this, and I try to do this in an orderly manner. And that would be the orphaned photo sites. Now, these types of websites are another place where you can find old family photographs. Now, they're typically user-submitted photos, and the people will perhaps submit their own unidentified photographs. So they might have a photograph, they don't know who it is, so they put it onto the orphan site to ask for help in that. Other times people will find one, say they'll rescue them from flea markets, and they will put them on the sites and put information, whatever they know about it, on there, hoping to be able to reunite that photograph with somebody, with the family. So that's kind of how people use these orphan photo sites. So, this would be one that, for instance, I could put up there and go, okay, I don't know who these are. I really still to this day don't know who these two individuals are. I sort of know, but I don't really know at all. And I could put that up there and say, hey, could anybody help me? I believe that these two men, they are from Halifax County, Virginia, maybe Pennsylvania County, 1910s. This photo would have been taken in around the 1910s. And, I believe they had some relation to the Richardson family, whether related or friends. So I could put that information out there and hope that somebody would eventually see it and let me know. Haven't yet, but you never know. So let's talk about some of the different types of different sites that are out there. So we have deadfred.com. I know my kids, when I first started genealogy and they heard me, I was on this site, they still laugh about it and they're adults. But anyway, deadfred.com is one of them. There's another one called Ancient Faces. And these, again, they're in your handout. There's one called Old Photographs of African Americans, Unknown Faces. And then there's Cindy's List, which has a large collection in general of other sites that you might want to peruse as well. But I want to show you and walk you through how I used DeadFred. This is probably the one that I personally use the most, that I've looked at based on my own research. But I wanted to walk you through it and show you kind of how you can use this to not only find find photos of your ancestors potentially, or get some of your photographs identified, but also I want to show you an interesting thing I found when I went looking for photographs. So when it comes to dead Fred, there are 5 ways to search using this. Now, my preferred method to search is actually the surname search. And I was searching for photographs for the Talbot family. This is my maiden name is Talbot, and it has 2 T's. That's how we spell it. But there are other spellings, obviously. So I do prefer the surname search. I've used the others, but this one seems to work more for my purposes. But they're all great. And so when I did that, I went into the T's and I clicked on T, and there we have, oh look, there's a couple different spellings here. We have Talbot with the 2 T's, and we have Talbot with the 1 T, and we have a Talbert. So I'm like, okay, that's really great, because I'll check each of these and see what I find. But I thought this is good. Sometimes I come on and there's nothing new there, but I was like, great, I'm going to look at the 2 T's. Now, the reason I'll keep mentioning the 2 T's is that my branch of the family is from South Central Virginia, and they typically use the 2 T's. Other branches still related tended to use the 1 T. So the Talbots up in Maryland, actually, where some of the ancestors are from, actually use the 1 T. So I was particularly interested in looking for these 2 T's person, though keeping a wide open mind on this. And so when I did, here was the information that I got. Here was the search page. So there were 7 photographs, and obviously some of them are the same family or the same photographs, so different people. And so we have one here in Ohio. Okay, we have another one in Ohio. So I'm not seeing any in Virginia, except for this one, Forkward. Not somebody in my tree, but somebody I was keeping in my brain. And so, but here is this photograph in Missouri. All right, so the plot looks like the Talbot family in Missouri. And I got very excited, guys, because I've been researching this family for a long time, and I know that there was a branch that I've been searching for that, quote unquote, went west. All right, the name Laura did pop up oftentimes in the family as well. And so when I looked at people leaving the area of Virginia where this family lived, there were a number of folks who migrated up to Missouri. So I was thrilled. I was like, okay, I didn't find the photographs I was hoping to find, but maybe I found something better. Maybe I found a lead to follow up on a family. And if they do connect, then I've got photographs as well. So I was thrilled with that. And then I took that photograph to really start comparing it to some of the family photos back in Virginia. So that's a current project I'm still working on, but I was thrilled to be able to do that and be able to find that. All right. Now, sadly, as I mentioned earlier, old family photographs sometimes end up out of the family. They might end up in an antique shop. They might end up in online auction sites, so something like an eBay. And so I always find that really sad. It kind of breaks my heart a little bit every time I do. I think about that and see, but that's the reality. And so I would encourage you to check eBay for family photographs, including things like not only photographs, but family Bibles, other family ephemera that might show up, that we know shows up on eBay and on the auction site. Now, you don't have to just kind of check it every day or anything like that. You can set up alerts on eBay. You can go into the directions. They will tell you how to set it up. You would maybe want to set up looking for, Talbot family photographs, antique photographs, might be another way. So antique, Talbot photographs, Talbot antique photographs, or Talbot family Bible, if I want to know the family Bible, those kinds of things, to be able to get an email or an alert when something like that comes on sale on the eBay site. So keep that in mind, set those up. And once you set those kinds of alerts up, you don't really have to keep going back. You can, unless you want to add more or adjust them, you'll be notified. Now, family history books. This is something that you may not have thought of to do with this. And published family histories on a specific family line or a surname can contain photographs of your ancestors. early in my research, I was actually directed to a family history book by the author, actually. I was queried her on some genealogy website. I don't think it exists anymore. Looking for information about the family. And so she actually reached out. She actually answered my query and said, find this book. She was one of the authors of it. She said, find the book and you'll find the information you're looking on the family from a genealogy standpoint, she said, but you're also going to find a picture of your third great grandparents in there as well. Well, it turns out this was the book I needed to find, The Colley Family of Pittsylvania County, Virginia. Now, I did a quick research on that book. I discovered that book was at a library within 3 miles of my house. I don't think I ran any red lights or broke any speed limit laws, but I might have pushed the limit there a bit. So I quickly got to that library as fast as I could. And sure enough, I found an entire book of the family history with not just the picture of my third great grandparents, but pictures of a lot of the ancestors. And so I was thrilled to have that. And so it did actually open up a conversation between myself and the author and her co-author. And we continue to share photographs and information back and forth. But if you do not have any family history books, if you haven't discovered those yet, they're not, again, this is something else. It's not as hard to find as you think. You just need to know where to look. Now, where I will look first is WorldCat. I go to WorldCat. Now, if you're not familiar with WorldCat, it is basically like the world's largest card catalog for books and articles and other things, but primarily I use it for books. And for us as genealogy researchers, it is a fantastic place to find written family histories. This is one of the primary places that I will go to do that. So I simply type in the title here of the book that I'm looking for and hit search. And then I get the results. So the full title of this particular book that I was looking for, Betty Colley is the one who actually pointed me in this direction, was called The Colley Family of Pittsylvania County, Virginia, Their Scottish Origins, Relatives, Descendants, including Connecting Families of the Cornwell, Jennings, and Richardson family. Well, I'm a Richardson family researcher, so this was obviously quite exciting to me. So this had the picture of my third great grandparents, different set than you saw earlier. Now, one of the things I love about WorldCat here is that sometimes if that book is available for you to read as an ebook, it will have it right here. This one is available in ebook form, meaning I clicked on that and I can immediately read it right there on my laptop. So it'll take you to the book. Now, not all books that you find here are going to be that way. So, but if it is, you're golden. You just saved a lot of time and you can just go ahead and read and you can find what you're looking for there. Now, if you don't have this, if it's not available, what you would do is you would click on the title and that takes you to the next screen. And what this screen is it's telling you the libraries that are close to you. So it's going to show you kind of the featured ones first and then all libraries. So if I needed to find it, then it would tell me the listing, kind of, which one's close, how far something is from me. And if I'm close enough, then maybe I could go and actually look at the book itself. Otherwise, there's a button called Borrow, and this basically takes you into an interlibrary loan type of interface. So if you find books here, they're not in your local library, something not close to you, then you can order them through interlibrary loan, and you can talk to your librarians if you're not really sure how to do that. They can help walk you through that process as well. Now, another thing that I use is very similar to WorldCat, has its differences certainly, but would be Google Books as well. Now, Google Books is free to use, and so you can search it. Again, the link is in your handout. It's just books.google.com or google.books.com. And here we have one called The Cox Family in America. Now, as you notice, this is an example of one. It was printed in 1912, meaning that this book is in the public domain, meaning we can then read that ebook. So you see that here. So here's the family here, again. And then because it's published as early as 1912, it's in the public domain, and we can actually read that book there. Now, if you wanted to get a book in print, it would give you options if there are any options available. There, for books like this, oftentimes there's not one to get. Sometimes you might find a library one, but again, I usually, if it's available online, I'm just going to read it online. And of course, you can have all kinds of ways to snip it and to download any of the pages that you see, because again, it's in public domain. Now, the Internet Archive is another one. I don't know if this is one that I would really think of first for finding family photographs, and you might, but I doubt it. I typically use it for other things. I use it to find family histories, older family histories here as well. But this would not be the first place I'd go to find photographs. It would definitely be in my list of things to look at as a just in case. I never want to miss something just because I didn't look, just because I didn't think to look or thought, okay, it probably doesn't have anything, because, well, you never know. I'm pretty tenacious, though, I will tell you, when it comes to searching for things. I leave no stone unturned. So on the Internet Archive, I found this wonderful book. It's literally a photo album, family photo album. It's for the Samuel H. Reynolds family from 1866 to 1935. So it has a large time span that it's covering. And look, here's one of the pages from this lovely photograph of these boys, or these, yeah, I guess boys we'll call them. And so we have W.G. Baker Jr. and S.H. Reynolds Jr., and it was taken July 31st, 1883. Now, if you are a Baker or if you are a Reynolds researcher, this is an amazing find that you might not find anywhere else. So I would encourage you to add the Internet Archive to your list of things to look at for potential photographs there. Now, there's online family trees, and I'm going to be honest, I was a little hesitant as to whether to include this one or not. And the reason I say that is, as genealogy researchers, we know that it is important not to just copy information from somebody's tree and add it to your own unless you've verified or you know that the information is accurate. Is it well sourced? Is it information that you personally know? Is it something that you have found on your own? So is it that way? Well, photographs are kind of the same way. So, if you looked at my tree, you would see I have a lot of photographs, you can tell. And while I know that these are all correct because I've had people who actually knew that people identify them, you might not know that. And so sometimes we do find errors with photographs, just like we find errors in the dates, but we might find errors in birthplaces, or sometimes we find the wrong people connected to the family tree, so then you have the wrong photo connected to you. So I just want you to say you can use the family trees online. So at like Family Search, My Heritage, Ancestry, Find My Past, but just make sure you're doing it with the knowledge that you need to make sure it's accurate. Okay. You need to leave yourself a note if you're not 100% sure so that you can verify it later. But just do it with, as I say, caution. All right. Just do it with caution. So now, another way that we can potentially go and search for our ancestors is using a Google image search. So, we can search Google for, well, lots of things these days, right? Anything you want, but you can also search for just search for images. So you can just strictly search for an image, and that's not, you can either type it in and ask for images on the results, or you can just go to their image search page and do that as well. Now, when you're doing that, what I would suggest is that you include a date range in your Google search. So if I'm looking for Esther Lee Richardson, then I like to put in a date range. So this would be her 1896 to 1925, because I want to be able to narrow down my results, because I could just get thousands maybe, but I would definitely want to narrow that down if possible. So here I have it here. I could actually, to be a little more accurate, probably put her name in parentheses. So Esther, I would put like parentheses, not parentheses, excuse me, quotation marks around Esther and Richardson. But I decided just to leave it open to see what I got first, and then I would work on narrow it down. So when I did that and asked for the images, what I found were a few images. So I found this image. Unfortunately, that is from my website. So obviously, at least it found it. That was a good thing to know. Whoops. And then it also found this one over here. And if you recognize that, we saw that one earlier in the program. Again, because this is Esther right here as well. So these were both on my website. Unfortunately, I didn't see any new ones on anybody else's site, but I continue to go back periodically to look and just to see what comes up because somebody else could be blogging. All right, we have more, guys. I know I've thrown a ton at you, but hang with it because I've still got more. All right, there are, and I've got examples for these. So there are passport applications. Think about that. We're going to look at gravestones. There's an interesting one. Vertical files. I love a good vertical file cabinet. Newspapers, definitely. Newspapers, are going to be an option. And how about mugshots? Don't you just love this? We're just going all through these through life experiences. And when you think about it, think about all the places that you personally have to provide your photograph for. We do for passports, right? If you have a passport, you had to provide a photograph, right? Well, guess what? For certain time periods, our ancestors did too. So don't overlook that. Sometimes, I forgot or didn't really think about ancestors who traveled. Well, you know what? Our ancestors did travel. And this is actually a passport application. It's for Abraham Jacobs, his wife Minnie. And I think he was traveling, this was from 1921, so 100 years ago. And so we have his passport application. Now, from a genealogical standpoint, it was gold. It was just tons of fabulous information for me. But what I would, when you're looking at these, make sure you turn the page or go to the next image over and check because there was a back page to it. And we have his description. So we actually have a physical description for him. And then we have his photograph. So this is Abraham Jacobs right here. Now, his wife is right here as well because during the time period, for this particular time period, and again, you have to kind of know what was required at the time. When a husband and wife were traveling, the husband made the application and the application covered both of them. So we have her as well, just not as much information about her, but we do have her as well. So we have photographs of this couple. Now, vertical files. I would love to be in the room with you to be able to see you and know who's used vertical files and who's not sure what they are. Well, vertical files are, they're kind of named because they're usually in a vertical file cabinet, right? And they're kind of like, what is that Forrest Gump quote about? It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Well, you don't, because what it is when people have donated family papers, perhaps, or information that might be about the community has landed at the library or the archives. Maybe it's not the kind of archival material that the formal archive wants, but it's valuable to the community. It tells a story of the community. And so there are vertical files and they are organized. And so you might find little church, you might find a file on a specific church that has its directory and its kids programs bulletins in it. You might find, as you find in this picture, which was actually a genealogist had passed away and the family did not know what to do with her papers. So they donated all of her handwritten notes to the local library who put them in a vertical file. And okay, these are gold, guys, because these are all the notes and the thoughts and the stories that you don't necessarily find in formal records. And I find photographs in these. The church directories that we talked about earlier, you will find those. I still find a lot of those in vertical files, actually. And then with that, you might find little flyers about Vacation Bible School and photographs from the kids at Vacation Bible School, those kinds of things as well. So I would encourage you to check out the vertical file. Again, you never quite know what you're going to find when you get there, but I never want to leave anything unturned. Newspapers, don't forget your newspapers, guys. So if your ancestor could have been in a newspaper, definitely want to do a search for them there. I use a lot of newspaper research. It has become one of my favorite places to research, not only to find photographs, but to find just really fun stories and color about my ancestors. And it takes their life from a dry birth, marriage, death tree Right, and it kind of puts it in full color, like Technicolor, and it tells me when I find them in the newspaper, I can learn a little bit about their story and their personality and kind of what was important to them. And so, and if I get really lucky, I can find photographs in there as well. So, but I would encourage you to make sure you're checking the newspapers for those as well, because you never quite know. And then mugshots. Okay, guys, when you are researching these, shall we say, black sheep ancestors who were on the other side of the law, while our ancestors may not have been really crazy about them, they may have been kind of, the family may not have been happy with them. From a research standpoint, they create a lot of records and they're good records. So I may not want to meet these ancestors in person, but I do appreciate the records that they have. So mugshots. If your ancestor was on the wrong side of the law, check and see what you can find as far as their mugshots and their penitentiary records. Now, I will say some of these, again, I find these on ancestry.com, the major genealogy databases, but I will say that sometimes you're going to run into privacy issues regardless of how old the records could be. Some states will not let you have these or let you see these. So you're going to have to kind of just figure out which ones do, if your state allows you to see these or not. But again, usually get a lovely, you get a good photograph of your individual. The other thing that you might see and would be a really good description. So they'll give a good physical description here, like with height and weight and complexion. Down here, it talks about the condition of their teeth. So we know kind of what their teeth look like. We even know what size their shoe is. So what size is their foot? Is that right? Yeah, size boot worn. So those are kind of fun little nuggets that you learn and you get to understand your ancestor. Again, some of it will, and as well as get to see who they are. But oftentimes you will find really good where somebody was born and who their parents were in a jail record as well. Now, gravestones. This is not a place, this is not the first place I go looking for photographs, guys, but I've been seeing more and more of this example of photographs in a tombstone. So this one was, this was Massachusetts, very cold in the snow, and I spotted this tombstone and I ran over there to it and took the picture of it because, again, it's a great example that you can find a photograph of an individual on a tombstone. Again, not the first place I'm going to go, but I'm not going to miss an opportunity if I get to see if I can find that photograph there as well. Now, what happens when you don't have a photograph? Because remember, when I talked about the photographs, we wanted to know what our ancestor looked like. So that was kind of the first level of this. And then we wanted to kind of know, do we look like our ancestor? Do we see certain characteristics in our own faces? Do we see certain characteristics that have made their way down the generations of line? I've looked at my family photos so much now, and people have given me so many in the family because they know that my closet door is open to anybody who wants to give me photographs. I can literally look at a photograph now and tell you which line of the family it's in because of just the shape of a face, the shape of the eyes, the tilt of an eyebrow. I've just worked with them that much. So I do recognize that now. But what happens when, well, no matter where you've looked, there are no photographs. What do you do? What do you do? Well, you still have a few options for that. So one of the things might be it's a draft record. So World War I, World War II draft records, you will oftentimes see on the back side, they will give a generalized account of what somebody looks like. So what their hair color was, their eye color, their build. Sometimes they'll be a little bit more specific about weight. If there's a specific scar, any kind of disability, sometimes you'll see that here as well. So that is one place to look for those kinds of things. And again, military records in general will also, if you have military records on your ancestor, may describe those as well. I just personally have not done a ton of military research, so I'm not quite as familiar with those. But here's another prison record. Again, remember we saw the mugshot, but this is from 1866, guys. So this is Charles Miller, and he gives a very, very specific description of him. Now, there's a lot of really good genealogical information in it, hands down, definitely. But let's just look at what he looked like, okay? He was 5'9". He weighed 164 pounds. His complexion was ruddy. His eyes were hazel. His hair was dark brown. He has a small, dark mole on the left side of his nose. He has a scar from a cut on the right cheek, also a scar on the right eyebrow. Mouth inclines to the left. And then it goes on, he can read and what his um, occupation is. So that's a really very distinct and description of what he looked like. In the event you find a photograph that you maybe weren't sure who it was, perhaps he matches. You never quite know. So this was a really, I wanted to kind of give you an idea that there are places to find when you can't find the actual photograph, you can find what they looked like. And that can be helpful to get that kind of description with them as well. Now, your turn, okay? I want you to not overlook the obvious, that being your family. Now, your immediate family, but your first cousin, your second cousin, your third cousin, however many cousins you can find out there, all right? I want you to not overlook asking the family because it's really, really important. Definitely look for online and offline sources. So some of these you're going to be able to sit down when we get done tonight and you can pop over to Ancestry and check out their yearbook collection or a digital collection for an archives and check out, maybe some of their special collections that might have photographs in them. Now, others are going to be offline that we talked about. So you may have to then make appointments to go and look for photographs that could be potentially offline. Those are going to be talking to family members type of things. Maybe you need to go to the local library and have a conversation with what they might have. Maybe their local newspapers haven't been digitized, they're still on microfilm. What do they have in the way of family histories in their family history room? But I really want you to, above all, as you're going through this, is to kind of think outside of the box of our traditional genealogy research. I just love diving into the records, but I have to stop myself at times and think, what else is there? What else, where else could my ancestor be? Where am I putting my photograph? What's required? What documents require that? I have to provide a photograph for my driver's license. Well, okay. Yes, my grandmother would have had one, but my great grandmother would not have had one. So I can't use that for her. I have to kind of think through that process. Yes, I provide a photograph for my passport. Well, guess what? Ancestors traveling 100 years ago, they provided a photograph for their passport. That's another place to start. So take some time and just think about what the possibilities could be. I've given you a ton of possibilities here today, but think about what your ancestor's unique situation and what that might have been. All right, so you can absolutely find me, guys, online. I'm at lisalisson.com pretty much everywhere, either my name or you can use Are You My Cousin, and you will find me online, and I'd love to connect with you there. So, Pam, I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'll come back around. I'll be happy to answer any questions that people might have. And I'm going to grab a sip of water.
Yes, certainly do that. There are a dozen questions, so take a nice sip of water right there.
Oh, there's always a lot of questions about pictures.
That's it. And again, wonderful presentation. We learned so much, and the comments said it, the questions say it. So here we go. First question. Recommendations on how to identify unmarked old family photos. Photo detective?
Photo detective Maureen Taylor is amazing for that. I also, on my website, have an entire section on photographs and identifying old photographs. You can absolutely search for that type of thing. So yeah, I actually have websites for that as well.
Okay. So photo detective, is that a website?
Photo detective is Maureen Taylor, and her website is, I think it's maureentaylor.com.
Oh, I'm sure
I
somebody
think
will look
look
it
at
up
that,
and put it
yeah.
in the chat.
And then on my
Okay.
site, which is lisalisson.com, I also have photographs. I also have blog posts on dating old family photographs, and I have like a 4-step process that I go through on how to identify the photographs
Okay.
of like who's in it and how to use what I have already know and how to compare it to my family tree as well. I have a video for that as well on the YouTube channel. So definitely there. A
Excellent.
lot of photos related for identification purposes on my YouTube channel.
Okay. Very good. Very good. I'll make sure people see that. And somebody did pop photo detective
Yeah,
maureentaylor.com.
Maureen. Oh yeah, she's amazing.
Fantastic. Next question. Do you recommend a specific program or process for scanning and sharing old family pictures? And that might be on your YouTube.
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things that I use a lot, I use an app called PhotoMyne, PhotoMyne. I use, I have the free version of it. They have a paid version of it. but I like it because it's great for scanning, and then I can save it to my Google Photos. And so I upload everything to my Google Photos and I share from there. It's my go-to app. So like if I'm out visiting somebody and
Mhm.
they have some, of course they're not, they don't want me to take it with me. It's just a really good app way to do that kind of thing. Each of the genealogy database, Ancestry and MyHeritage both have apps that will scan photos. Typically though, you would upload it to their tree, your tree at those sites. And I think that's fabulous. And I actually do that. I wanted to have some that were just out of the genealogy realm because not everybody who wants these photographs is interested in the whole genealogy piece of it. They should be, but they're not. And so I use that app, PhotoMine. Yep, that's it. Yep, they do have that one. They have a free version, they have a paid version. I've met those guys before. They're fabulous. Have created that. And then typically I store my photographs when I scan them in my Google Photos, so I share from there. Sometimes if I want a really clean high definition one, I'll just do it off like a flatbed scanner.
Very good. And this is another question related to this, but has a twist. What is the best way to preserve old photographs for sharing with future generations? And the quote is, some of my great aunt's photos have really faded as the names written in ink are on the back of the photos. So I guess anything you can hint about the reference there?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really good thing because they do absolutely they will fade away, and so you can use so PhotoMine, that app actually will, when you scan it, there isn't you can actually correct your photos, so it will like fix colors. It'll colorize them if they're not colorized. I might do that, but I like to have the original in its original coloration, whatever that was, whether it was black and white, sepia tone, whatever. I like that original color myself. And then but it also allows you to take a picture of the back of it and connect those two files together. And
Wonderful.
that's really important. I'm trying to remember if the Ancestry app and the MyHeritage app do or not. I think they might, but the PhotoMon's the one I use the most. But it allows you to connect those two, and that's really helpful because she's absolutely right. You've got the identification. The other thing is wherever you're storing your photos, so if you scan it and you know who's in it, then you add that into the metadata to make sure that that's captured.
Excellent. Next question. If I have photos I want to donate, who would you recommend I donate to first? Local historical societies, state archives, genealogy societies?
Oh gosh. I would probably start at the archives, and if they say no, then I would work my way down to maybe the local um, historical society or genealogical society. I think that I mean it's kind of equal in my mind. Some counties have a more robust historical society. Some counties have a more robust genealogical society as far as their database or is what they will take. It's possible. I would actually, if the archives, if an state archives didn't want them or didn't want all of them, then I might look at, say, at the county level or town level museums. So for instance, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina. There is a city museum downtown. So if I had some information, if I had some photographs that were taken, say, from the early 1900s in this area, then I might say, hey guys, are you interested in them? Because they are also a type of repository. They may say yes, they may say no, but that would be probably what I would start with.
Yeah, and they may refer you to someplace else.
Exactly. And that's the key is that so if you talk to the archives, you talk to a museum, you talk to a historical society, and if they say no, ask who else do you recommend I talk to? It's a really great question and can kind of get you further down the road.
Very good. Now, somebody was following along with the handout and said you skipped over for Flickr. Can you talk about
Oh,
that?
I did skip over Flickr. So the reason I skipped over Flickr, actually, I can pull that back. If you give me just a second, I think I can pull those slides back up. The reason I skipped over Flickr is one, I knew that this talk was going to go like really long. And then two, I don't use it as much as I used to, but hang on, I'll be happy to show it to you. Hang on one second. I'll put those slides back in and let me see if I can get these back in for you.
That'd be great.
Uh,
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. If you guys don't mind sticking with me a little bit longer.
We're
Okay.
yours.
Okay, you can stick it from there. That work?
And while she's doing her magic for her slides, just remember this presentation was recorded. It's going to be on our website tomorrow morning under hcpl.online.org under the HCPL universe, and that handout will be there as well if you don't have it already.
All right, Pam, let me come back and I'll share that slide with you. I actually went into it yesterday because I was like, I hadn't used it in a while, and I was like, is it something I still true? Oh, wait a minute, I've lost. Hang on, I got too many tabs. I lost somebody. Okay, let's see. I was kind of like, do I really, is this what I would share, or do I just really not do this a lot anymore? And so I think, given just technology advances, I probably just would do it a little bit differently. All right, are you seeing my screen?
Yep.
Great. Okay, let me get it where I can see it now. Okay, so this is Flickr, and Flickr, it's a free photo storage. I think they've been changing a little bit on their site as far as what they charge. There is a paid site part of it too. But you do need a free Flickr account for this. I think you can store up to like 1,000. So one of the things that I did early on, this looks like I did it way back in 2014. I actually uploaded a lot of my family photos here, and I had two specific albums. I had the unknown ancestors. I had a couple of those, and my reasoning was, one, I wanted to be able to share like an album with my family and um, send it out to a bunch of cousins and say, who are these people? I know that they are related to the Richardsons side of the family, but I don't know who they are. Can you help me? So it's like a one link, like a Google photo album. So I actually ended up doing more in Google Photos, but I still have this over here. So hoping that then I would periodically go into Flickr and I actually search for certain family names to see if anything is showing up. I'm seeing less of that than I used to, so I had kind of moved away. But here's where I started seeing things that got interesting. Archives, other groups, museums will have put their digital collections on Flickr. And this is a really cool thing to see. And so you can look at this. This was just a little sample of some that I follow. So I've got the State Library and Archives of Florida. They have 5,000 photos. The Texas State Archives has 1,400. So these aren't large numbers, but they are numbers that I, could potentially look at. Internet Archive was actually on here. And so the Digital Heritage Center, North Carolina Digital Heritage Center was there. So you can see that they, some of these are a lot, some of these not so much. Again, I'll go after anything, right? So this is the Florida Memory. So you come over here and they have albums. And so here they have outdoor recreation, weather, postcard collection. I think I even have like a little, hang on, let's see. They have yeah. So I have a little video and I'm going to talk you through this a little bit here, guys. So you're going to see this guy. My video skills were a little, so you can start to see all the different collections here. We have, there's like a John K. Small collection. So that would be a family. Midwives in Florida. Okay, so if you have ancestors, looking for women ancestors. I clicked on this William Fishbaugh collection, and he was a professional photographer in the area. And you can see he was taking photographs of various things in the area. We have women, so we have nurses, we have some of the farming, some of the different individuals. We can see what it was like. So these are fun to actually go through. I do find actual full-on family collections in a few of these, and so this would be absolutely a place you could look for as well. I don't see as many of these as I used to, but and this one doesn't look, they've grown a lot. But oh, baseball, love that one. I actually have some baseball players in our family tree, so they were like really super minor league, and so you can find photos of them here. This is a Women's History Month, so they have women from all over. And again, so we have her. It'll give information on. Let me get this out. Sorry. So this is a profile. It tells us about who she is, Man Jennings. It gives us a little bit more information. It was taken in 1901, and it talks a little bit about her family and who she was. So this is another place that you could actually potentially go. I tend to find this type of information has kind of been incorporated in a lot of other things online with some of the digital collections, the way the archives are housing things these days, but it's still another resource you can absolutely try.
Well, I'm glad that we got that question then.
Yep.
Another question for you. Regarding military yearbooks, would they have been destroyed at the big fire in St. Louis that I had a lot of Army records? Anywhere else we could look for Army records or women who served in the Marines during World War II?
Right, now you're getting out of my depth here. But no,
You're
I
allowed
am
to
not
say
an ex
that.
I'm not an expert on military records at all. I do not know about those, yearbooks, if they would have been destroyed in the fire or not. My guess is there's still some out there and around. Definitely sometimes they might have been within the family. Where would you find those? Okay, go into Chat GPT and ask it. Literally, I'm not trying.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, that's where I would go for it and ask those questions. And and also for the women in the Marines, I'm just not that savvy enough on military records to know exactly where things are for that. I wish I could had a better answer for you than I do.
No, no, no. It gave us another lead. Next question. Will the Library of Congress in DC have yearbook archives?
I've not looked for them. It's possible. I've not actually looked for the yearbooks at their site, but go in, you can actually go in and have a really good search function. Just put in yearbooks and see what you find, and
Mhm,
then filter out by like a certain state if you're looking for a certain state.
mhm.
That's actually a really good idea. I'm actually going to write that down and try that out
Woo!
later. I'm like,
Way to
that's why I love doing
go.
this because I get more ideas.
Excellent. Okay. Next question kind of goes back to your Chat GPT. What do you think of using AI to bring old photos alive?
Oh, alive. Okay, so okay, I will say I use AI for a lot of things, guys. I truly do. When it comes to animating and making my photos alive, um, I don't personally like it. That is a personal, truly just a personal preference. I think it's really cool, and I think that if it's that technology, if that is something that make if showing your grandparents dancing the jitterbug, if that's been redone and animated, and that gets somebody interest and that piques a young person's interest in family history and knowing more about something, then yeah, I'm all
Yeah.
for it. I mean, I like to keep the original
Hmm.
safe, but yeah, I'm all for that. The reason I don't personally do it is it's like my nightmare from being a kid. Like, I would play in my grandparents' attic, and there was a picture of my great grandmother up there. I was fascinated by it. I now have that photograph though, and or it was like a hand painted, hand tinted photograph, and but I just was always like, she's looking at me. She's alive. She's looking at me. I mean, I was 5, and so when I think My Heritage was the first that came out with that I played with, and I animated the photograph, and I had to stop I just shut it down right away because I was like, that was literally my childhood nightmare come alive, and I couldn't do it
Bit too
anymore.
creepy.
It's creepy, but that is personal preference. I think the technology is amazing. I'm glad they put it out there because, again, if that's what gets somebody's interest and gets a conversation going, then I'm all for it.
Okay. So here's another probably AI question. Do you know of a database that can work backwards, try to predict what relatives might have looked like based on the images of other relatives?
I've not done that, and I don't know if any. It's like an age progression, but an age regression, maybe. Oh, maybe we're going back. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Not really regression, but I don't know what I don't know what databases would do that or what specific programs would do it. I mean, there probably are some, but I'm just not familiar with them.
Okay. And I think you mentioned a source for passport applications. Can you repeat that?
Oh, yeah, so the examples I had for that were in ancestry.com. So that's a collection from ancestry.com. And about the latest I saw, those were the example I had was like 1921, I think 1923, somewhere right in that time period. I don't know if you'll find anything much more contemporary than that particular time period, but
Mhm.
definitely was worth a look.
Yeah.
My guess
And
is and I think so. When you think about passports, so these are obviously I'm using U.S. examples, but you will see if you're doing European research, there are passports say like during the war for people to move within the country and those kinds of things. So there are other types of things that might be called a passport that are not necessarily like what we're thinking about traveling overseas. Sometimes it was movement within the country if it was during wartime.
okay, excellent. Um, so this goes back to the mug shots. So one of our viewers said, compare mug shots to newspapers.com because the crime or trial may have been made the newspaper. That's a hint.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The mugshot in the newspaper. because if you find newspaper they were in a crime, then you can look for the mugshot or the jail record, or and vice versa. Again, one of the things that I ran into when I was talking about using jail records and these kinds of things, I was giving the talk in North Carolina, and one of the archivists said, "By the way, Lisa, in the state of North Carolina, the privacy laws won't let you have them." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, oops." So, but one of the examples I used that I've used a lot was actually out of Massachusetts, and it was, you know, they're like, "Have at it." I just had to get somebody to go get it. So,
Very good. Another question for you. I've contacted distant relatives for photographs. Some people are so helpful, and some people tell me they have to look and never get back to me. How have you handled this kind of relative?
oh gosh, I sweet talk them, and I offer. Sometimes I'll try to help them. So, like, if they need, I'm like, I would love to digitize them and save them for you, and let me help you. What can I do for you to help you? Kind of thing. So sometimes I'll do that. I've been really fortunate that people are pretty willing to to get them, mainly because I guess I have enough of a reputation in the family now that I'm going to come after you anyway. But for those photographs, but yeah, I would actually probably ask, how about can I come over? Can we have a cup of coffee? Can I take you to lunch? And then may I digitize your photographs? And sometimes you really have to build that relationship a little bit more. If it's somebody, maybe you know them, but maybe it's not something you've really talk to
Hmm.
them frequently.
Hmm.
Sometimes just building a relationship with them a little bit more will then help break that ice. They'll get them. Sometimes it's, let's have a cup of coffee and tell me about when you were a little girl and I heard that you went to school and you loved to be in plays. Can you tell me more about that? Or, who was your grandmother? So if you start kind of going at it from that direction and kind of get into the family history piece and then get into the photos, sometimes
They're more
they're
invested.
more willing to put the effort into it, I guess, because
Yeah,
they're interested in it. And I do always make sure I'm like, I'm going to scan this, but I'm also going to give you a copy of it so that you'll have a scanned copy. I try to make sure, or I'll take copies if I know that they don't have a copy or something. I always scan it and I take them. I'm like, here, I brought you some things, I brought you some things for you to enjoy.
very good. This is the last question I see. What is the safest way to protect our photographs and personal archives?
That's something that's always a bit of a challenge, and the best thing would be to do using archival safe type of products to store those original photographs in. And so you can find them online at Ancestry, excuse me, Amazon has a lot of those. I will be honest, I think they tend to be it's expensive stuff. It is not inexpensive to do that. But Melissa Barker, the archive lady, she says you do the best that you can with what you have. And so the first thing that I would do is make sure that they are not being kept in an attic. They're not being kept in a basement, someplace where temperature swings come back and forth. The best place would be to have them, in maybe a closet, kind of a cooler place, but something that there's not a lot of extremes, not a lot of humidity, because if they're in
Hmm.
a garage or basement, humidity could be damaging them. Or say, bugs could get into them. So trying to get them into just a really stable, cool environment in the house would be the first thing to do, so that they don't, you know, you can minimize the fading. Some of and then as I'm able and as I can afford them, then I get those. I'll periodically invest in a set of the archival boxes, the archival sleeves for my older photographs. I start with the older, more fragile ones first
Hmm.
and get the products that way. So, because I'll be honest, those products are expensive, but I try to just do it the best that I can with what I have. So you just kind of work your way up to it as well. And then sometimes I have things that um, I have like other type of ephemera, like I have like my great grandmother's bonnet, that I might wrap it in a tissue paper. Really could needs archival type stuff, but if I don't have that, at least something to keep the dirt or dust away from it until I can get a better option for it.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, somebody put in their white envelopes in cardboard shoebox, not plastic. Yes, do not put them in plastic.
Very good. That's all the questions I see. Do you have anything last minute to tell us before we say goodnight?
I can't think of anything. I think I've said I've told so many things now at this point.
That's fine. Well, we do appreciate it. Lisa, you're just always a delight to work with. You have so much information. There's been a lot of chat, a lot of questions. We really appreciate everyone's experience this evening and interaction. So I do want to also remind everyone to take a look at our website, hcplonline.org. Genealogy for more genealogy resources. We have links to Ancestry, Fold3, and a family search. And then there's tutorials that will help you navigate your way through. And the for family search, access to the enhanced digital content is available only in Bel Air. I'm using the public computers there, and there's no remote access for in-home use, but you've mentioned those sources tonight, so I thought I'd mention our connection to them. So thank you everyone again for joining us. Thank you, Lisa, for having the presentation. And as a reminder, this presentation was recorded and will be available along with that handout at hcplonline.org and the HCPL Universe for the next 4 weeks. And next week, we're going to have our last Family History Month virtual genealogy program on Tuesday, the 21st. And it's going to be the tour of Family Search Labs. So that should be a lot of fun. Also, mark your calendars for Genealogy Week 2026, which begins Monday, January 26th. As always, registration's on our website, hcplonline.org. And we hope to see you next week and in January. And if you can, take a moment to complete that quick survey after the credits. We use your input really to choose topics like these for these virtual genealogy programs. So it's really important to us. So please do that for me. So we do thank you. We want to make sure you have a great rest of your week. And thanks again. I appreciate it.